Today we're going to fire up the CNC mill, make some chips, and break another Haimer tip, which is fine. It's fine. That's what they're for. Welcome back to Cloud 42. I'm James. We are going to continue work today on the spindle mount for the new high-speed spindle for my Grizzly mill. Last time we got most of the parts machined, but this time I want to do a little bit of backtracking and make a couple of changes. I made some changes to the design in part based on viewer feedback in the comments from the last video, and there were some good ideas in there for some genuine improvements, and there's some aesthetic things that I want to do. After looking at the drawings and looking at the parts, I decided I wanted to make them look a little bit nicer. Let's go over to the bench and take a look. Now, the first change that I want to make from the original design is a minor one, but I think an important one. It came from the comments on the last video, actually. I'm planning on putting this together with 5/16 18 screws, and I've got these holes already bored out to size and counterbored to recess the head of the bolt. And what somebody suggested in the comments I thought was a fantastic idea was that I really need to have a hardened washer under the head of the bolt, because these are, alloy screws and they're going to be pulling down tight and there's going to be a lot of vibration here. It will be very helpful to have a hardened seat for the screw to pull against so that I can get reliable torque without deforming the aluminum. Without that, the aluminum is going to just smear under the head of the bolt and release the torque. And so I need to make some washers, but in order to actually put the washers in here, I got to have the counterbore be a little bit deeper. So we'll just run back over to the mill, put it back in the same setup we used when we bored these holes originally, and just go 1/16 of an inch deeper to make room for the hardened washers. Let's go over to the mill and set it up. Now, you'll recall when we set this up last time, in order to get enough reach on the y-axis to get to these holes out here, I had to take the jaw out of the back of the vise. It might be possible to do some setups, as people suggested, with a subplate or clamping directly down to the table here on the mill, but I can reach if I just take this back jaw out. It's just aluminum against the steel subjaw, so I'm not too worried about damaging the vise. Grab some short 1/2 inch parallels just to get it up enough that I can use the edge finder on the edge of the part. And we'll drop it in here. I only have one setup to do here, so I'm not too worried about setting up an end stop. But I will make sure that it's down and the parallels are tight. Now, it's been a couple of weeks since I ran this, so I honestly don't remember exactly where my zero was. I think it's on the center of this top back edge, but that's why we have setup sheets. Okay, program 1002, and yes, indeed, it is on the top back of the part. I'm still sitting. Well, there's a Haimer tip exploded. That's why I bought more. Okay, I'm curious, I just replaced the Haimer tip because I just snapped it off being an idiot. But I've got a new tip in there, and I just checked the Z. It's within 1,000th, which is the sort of variance I would expect to see from tip to tip. And so we'll, of course, at some point want to re-zero this thing and make sure we're still in good shape after the tip replacement. But we'll do that before we zero in on the next part. Okay, we should be good to go, and this setup only calls for one tool. That's tool number 15, which is just a 1/4 inch 3-flute alu power end mill, and we're just going to plow down and make one circuit around each one of these counterbores, just making them a 1/16 of an inch deeper. Well, that looks pretty good to me. Yep, got these drop in deeper, and I can't see any misalignment at all. It just looks like a nice clean cut right around the original profile. Okay. I've been doing some inspecting on these just to make sure that everything looks good, and I can't even, except for the fact that there's no dirt on the surface, I can't tell the difference between the new section of the counterbore and the old section. Feeling it with pins, I can't feel any misalignment, so that actually worked out really well. Now we just need to do the counterbores in the side plates. And for these, I'm going to set it a little bit higher because the part's thinner, so I've got some 1-inch parallels that are going in instead of the 1/2-inch ones that were in there before. Now I do want to use an end stop with this because I got 2 of these parts and I need the setup to be repeatable. So I will bring the stop in here. Touch it to the side, but I'm not going to count on that for positioning. I'm going to actually loosen up the vise and then slide the part against the stop. And tighten it down. And make sure our parallels are tight. And making sure I know where the 0 is, let's zero this in. Back to tool 15 to deepen the counterbores. And that is quite enough rework. Let's move on to something new. The other change that I have decided to make to the design is purely aesthetic. This is the back plate, and I had originally imagined that, once I had the side plates on here, the bottom here is just square, and I was just going to put some chamfers on it, leave it big and blocky, with some simple chamfers. You know, just knock the corners off of the thing. And you know, this would be all right, but the more I thought about it, the more I didn't like this idea. As long as I got a CNC mill, I might as well do something fun with it. And so I went back in and changed the design of this back plate and decided to put in a little step here. So we've got kind of a radius across the bottom, and then step in and carve out more of the material. And so when this is all put together, there will be less material here and a couple of contours and a couple of curves. It'll look nicer. It'll look a lot more like the original cast iron mount that's on the mill now. And I think just from an aesthetic standpoint, it's something that I can, you know, look at for the next 10 years as I'm using this machine and feel good about. So the work holding on this is going to be a little bit tricky. Just to hold it and carve out the top here is going to be fairly straightforward, except because of the length of the part and wanting to be able to reach down and then ultimately grip on these curved surfaces, I think I am going to move the jaws to the outside of the vise, and we're going to try to hold it that way, which requires a little bit of a tricky setup, and I will show you how I'm going to do that. Let's go over to the mill and set it up. For this setup, I need to put the part in the mill in this direction, and I'm going to be primarily just cutting on this end. I can't sink it as deep into here as I did when I was doing the other side of it. And after I cut the step on the first side and I have to flip it over and contour the back, then I no longer have a flat surface. So I can't just put it against this sub jaw the way I'd been doing. So what I'm planning on doing is flipping this around, putting this jaw on the outside, and then clamping on top of the anvil of the vise here. So let me take this jaw off and move it to the outside. Just want to check my setup sheet here and make sure I'm putting this in the correct direction. So I want to set this on top and bring it up against that other jaw. Okay, so I can just clamp this in place like this and it'll probably be okay, but when I flip it over, I'm going to want to make sure that I have more support here on the bottom. And so what I need is a parallel that is the same height as this surface that I'm putting the part on. And this is an odd dimension. There are no standard parallels that will fit this, so we will use an adjustable parallel. And this is a little Starrett set that I picked up. And so this is a 154, and I believe the D is going to be about the correct size. Yeah. So what I'll do is I will just slide this parallel. I will first loosen this parallel. And then just slide it open so that it's shorter than the part I need. And I'll just press this down on top and just size it correctly by opening it up until it just fills the space, and tighten it down. Now that parallel can sit right there. Let me test to make sure it really feels right. Yep. That parallel can sit right there. And I can set the part on top of it and clamp it down. I think we're ready to zero up on this. And the zero, as usual, is on this top edge. Okay, we've got a lot of material to remove up here, and I do not want to be here all day, so I am actually going to switch over and use a 3/8 inch end mill. This is a 3-flute Alupower end mill, YG1, and I don't use this tool very often because this is the one tool that has pulled out, and what ends up happening is I've got the ER20 collet in here clamped tightly. The tool doesn't move there, but up here on the TTS tool holder shank, that tends to pull down out of the spindle if it's not really, really tight. And I've done a couple of things here. One is I've switched over, and this is a genuine Tormach TTS tool holder. So we're not dealing with the cheap imports that I've been using, and I'm hoping that the grind on this and the grind in the Tormach collet will hold better. And then I'm just going to tighten it down as tight as I can by hand, and then keep an eye on it while it's running. And it's really easy to tell exactly what's going on. All you gotta do is look at the joint where it meets the spindle nose, and if that starts to open up, it's time to hit the big red button. You can generally tell it's happening though, because it makes an enormous amount of noise, and what you're doing is you're just cutting deeper and deeper into your part, and hopefully we can avoid that today. Okay, and the program says the Z minimum is 3/4 of an inch, and we've got 7/8 clearance to the vise jaw, so we should be fine. Well, that actually worked really well. I'm quite pleased with that. Now we need to flip it over so that we can mill the curve on the other side. Now when we flip this part over, we immediately run into a problem with how to hold it. So we need to flip it over this way, and we need to cut a curve, which means we can't hang on to this flat surface because that flat surface is going to all be cut away, which means we need to hold on down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace this jaw with a V-block that should be able to fit into the space underneath this and grab onto that front corner, and then we'll see how secure it is and decide if we need to do anything else. Need one of those speed handles for my vise. Now this is just a shop-made V-block vise jaw, and all it is an aluminum jaw with a V cut in it. Hopefully we'll have the clearance here to hold this. Then we'll use the same adjustable parallel set to the same height to support the front of the part. And let's see how this fits. And there we go. Now I had thought a little bit about whether I need some chicken clamps holding this down to make sure that the tool doesn't pull it up. But honestly, I think we're going to be okay. This seems secure enough to me. Let me grab the Haimer, let's find this edge and run the program. Okay, my biggest concern is just because this came tangent to the edge of the original part is whether we left a flat or whether it's continuous. Gosh, I sure don't feel, there might be a flat there, I'm not totally sure. See if I can see it with a mirror. Be right there. I don't see it. I think we hit it pretty close. So I mean, I was going to go back and take another 10 thou or take another thou or two, but this intersection lines up beautifully. That intersection lines up beautifully. I think I am just going to call this done. Now I didn't chamfer any of these. I don't want to chamfer here because this is actually going to be fitting flush against a plate. And I don't want a groove in there. And then on the other side, I could have chamfered that, the top edge, but it comes up close to an edge here that's gonna have a plate on it. And so I didn't really want to do that either. So I just left them and I'll treat them with a file and clean them up or just a deburring tool. And I think that is all the machining that needs to be done on this part. Yeah, I like that a lot better. Here you can get a nice close-up of how that turned out, and I'm really quite pleased with it. You can see around the front here, even after I got it off the mill, I was expecting to see a flat spot here that I just couldn't feel, but that's a nice smooth curve. I'm actually really impressed since that just came tangent. And I saw it as it was cutting around, it stopped making chips, so it came just exactly tangent. Could not be happier with that. Then the side pieces, of course, go on like this, and I was hoping that this would come completely flush, and feeling it here on both ends. It is exactly flush. I can't even feel the difference in length there. Okay, I'm real happy with that, especially since I moved this around in different setups in order to accomplish that. Okay, and so of course I've got some holes to drill and tap in this to make it so I can put the bolts in. And I've got to make the hardened washers, and we'll continue on that in a future video. For now, I am out of time today just because of the heat. In the summertime, my shop here gets really, really warm, and I have to turn off the air conditioning for the house so that the blower's not running in the background making noise. And I need to get that back turned on because it's getting later into the morning and the heat's coming. And so I'm going to be about done here in the shop for today. But we will be back soon to finish up this project. You know, projects like this are always interesting to me. I am always looking for a good reason or excuse to buy new tools, and I had always wanted a set of these Starrett adjustable parallels. And it's just not something that I had ever been able to justify until I realized that if I want to clamp these parts over the top of my vise, I actually don't have a parallel the right size to match. So that gave me a good excuse or reason to do this. And you know, I decided to go ahead and get the Starrett. You can get cheap ones, but you know, as long as I'm buying some tools, I might as well buy some good ones that are going to last a lifetime and that I will enjoy using. And honestly, all of this is made possible by you guys. You're watching the videos, and you know, it generates some revenue for the channel here and allows me to do things like this. And same thing with offering products for sale. I have been just overwhelmed with the support that I have received, and it's allowed me to, you know, get some nice things for the shop. And then all of that turns back into more content for you guys. So thank you very much. If you're enjoying these videos, give me a thumbs up, feel free to subscribe to the channel, and leave me a comment. As always, I'd like to know what you think. Thank you for watching.